Better Together, Ball State University and Muncie, a series of community forums hosted by the Star Press and Ball State University. From Cornerstone Center for the Arts, the theme of the third of 3 community forums will be economic development.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, I'm Greg Fallon. I'm the executive editor at the Star Press in Muncie. Welcome to our third and final Better Together Forum with Ball State President Jeff Mearns. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here at Cornerstone or via broadcast tonight. We are live streaming on Facebook, both for Ball State and with the Star Press. Tonight we will discuss economic development and how Ball State and Muncie can work together to address the issues. First, I would like to take a moment to thank Ball State President Jeff Mearns for joining us tonight and listening to the community as we start a new chapter in Ball State's partnership with Muncie. We can all appreciate how President Mearns and his wife Jennifer have already made a personal commitment to Muncie by establishing the Mearns Proud Family Scholarship for Muncie Central students who will be the first in their families to go to college. President and Mrs. Mearns have given $100,000 to the fund, and with other donations, the fund has now more than $400,000. So thank you to them for that. I also want to take a minute to welcome our panelists tonight. First, we have Tracy Lutton, the Vice President of Economic Development for the Muncie-Delaware County Economic Development Alliance. Chris Caldwell, Senior Vice President of Commercial and Business Banking for Mutual Bank. Delaina Boyd, Interim Associate Vice President of Community Engagement at Ball State. And David Terrell, Director of the Rural Policy Research Institute Center for State Policy and Interim Co-Director of Ball State's Indiana Communities Institute. Tonight's community forum will be similar to the second one, which we had 2 weeks ago at Minnetrista about arts and culture. So if you caught that one, things will be very similar tonight. President Mearns has said he wants to listen more and talk less, so that'll be the goal throughout the evening. He's here to listen to what you have to say. And in doing that, in keeping with that spirit, you were handed a card as you walked in tonight. These are questions that he and the university are posing to you, the public. So if you haven't reviewed that yet, please be sure that you're doing that. We will be posing those questions to you tonight, and we'll invite you to come forward to answer those questions and, of course, give your thoughts. Some of those questions for those who might be watching the broadcast: what are some of Muncie's greatest assets that together we can build upon? And what are some of the greatest challenges? How can Ball State partner with Muncie to encourage economic growth? It is important for economic development to have clear and measurable goals. What do you consider to be top priorities? Ball State would like to see Muncie's talented high school students attend Ball State and stay engaged with their hometown. How can we partner to accomplish this? And every community must continue to evolve in order to grow and be vibrant. What 3 things are our greatest opportunities? If you have questions of your own tonight of the panel, of President Mearns, or of our panelists, please write those on the blank index cards that were handed out as you walked in. Amy is going to be walking up down the aisles and she'll be collecting those. So as soon as you have a question, fill it out on the card and give those to her, and she will bring those up to me. And hopefully we'll sprinkle some of those in throughout the evening as we go through the discussion. As a courtesy to everyone, please silence your cell phones. And I would like to take just a minute to go over some ground rules. The Star Press will serve as an impartial moderator tonight. We are supportive of both the university and of the community. All questions are welcomed but must be submitted in writing. As I said, the index cards have been provided. We invite you to write on those cards and send those to the aisle staff. We welcome everyone to participate tonight. We want to hear from as many people as possible. My role as MC is to ensure no one person dominates our conversation and to make sure that we are here to respectfully address issues and not attack individuals. These forums are just one of many ways in which President Mearns is gathering information. After the community forums, President Mearns will summarize what he has heard and later outline what steps the university will take. So, without more to do here, let's get started. Let's meet our panelists. And we did this last time, and I think it worked well. It's important for you guys to get to know our panelists a little bit, so we've asked them in 2 or 3 minutes to sort of summarize who they are, who they're associated with, and also tell us a little bit about some partnership that they might already have with the university. So, Tracy, you get to go first.
I'm Tracy Lutton. I'm the Vice President of Economic Development for the Muncie, Delaware County Economic Development Alliance. We are a private economic development organization. We were formed in the late 1980s for the purpose of business attraction and working on making Muncie, Delaware County a desirable place to do business. We still work in those arenas, but our focus has shifted or expanded in recent years with the new Vision 2021 plan. There's more emphasis on initiatives related to quality of life and quality of place. Through this work, we engage with the university on a regular basis. My phone rings multiple times a week from students and faculty, and we're always seeking ways to collaborate. In fact, tomorrow I have a meeting with some students interested in pursuing ideas around a land bank in the community. Next week, another meeting similar to that with a faculty member on a similar topic. We're working with Ceres in the College of Architecture and Planning right now to work on a green business summit to find ways that we might educate our manufacturing community and other businesses within Muncie to adopt sustainable business practices that make good business sense to them. We have a meeting next week with the computer science department because we have an employer who needs coders and programmers, and we are hoping to find some connections there that might help retain some students and help an existing employer. So there are many, many examples of the ways that we regularly collaborate, but I want to add that I'm a Muncie native and a Ball State grad, and I chose to stay here while many of my friends and classmates decided to move to big cities and other states, many of whom have returned, by the way. But I do this because I love this town and I love the people here, and I find myself consistently surrounded by people who are innovative, compassionate, energetic, and it's just a really inspiring place and a pleasure to do this kind of work. So I'm happy to be here tonight, and I look forward to your questions and the dialogue that we're going to have.
As our moderator said, my name is Chris Caldwell, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Commercial and Business Banking at Mutual Bank. My role tonight really is Chair of the Board of Directors of your Muncie and Delaware Chamber of Commerce. We continue to be trying to focus on economic development initiatives within the Vision 2021 plan and the quality of place components as well. But I think sometimes it gets overlooked that Muncie, Delaware County has really become the East Central Indiana economic hub. And it's that hub primarily because we have a world-class institution like Ball State right in our midst. And that university is driving a lot of different economic development initiatives and activities. One of the things that Tracy and her colleagues have worked on are site developments within Delaware County. We have a site on the south side of Muncie that was going through a certification process to allow us to try to attract new business to the community. And in that process, discovered that we had some potential archaeological dig components within it that we needed to verify and certify that were not going to be an issue. We could have gone to a variety of consultants around the country who would have charged us a lot of money to do this. Instead, we called up some folks at Ball State University who said, yeah, we have the expertise to do that for you. And as a matter of fact, that would be a great project for some of our students. We paid the students, we paid the university for that work. President Mearns, no offense, we didn't pay them as much as some world-class consultants out there, but we did pay them. And in the process, we're able to get that site certified, and it's now in Tracy's toolbox whenever she's out talking to companies around the country about coming to Delaware County. Mutual Bank itself has been the beneficiary of numerous wonderful, high-quality interns young men and women who have come to work for us for a semester or 2 semesters, many of whom have decided to stay with us. We are very proud of and very pleased with the number of Ball State grads that work for Mutual Bank and have chosen to live here in Delaware County because they are, as Tracy said, very proud of their home. And this has become their home if they had come from outside of the area. So very pleased to have Ball State in our midst.
Good evening. I'm Delaina Boyd, currently serving as the Interim Associate Vice President of Community Engagement at Ball State. For those of you who don't know, and I see lots of friends in the audience this evening, the Office of Community Engagement serves as a front door to the resources available through the university. We have 7 colleges, 60-plus academic departments, and thousands of talented faculty, staff, and students. And for those on the outside, it's oftentimes difficult to know how to maneuver through the resources of the university. Our office and the staff of the Office of Community Engagement work to help folks navigate through the campus to make the right connections. Our role is to link the resources of the university to the needs and priorities in the community. I heard someone once say that we must have one foot on campus and the other firmly planted in the community at all times, and I really think that that's the case. Our work is broken into 2 buckets. The work that we do off campus, assessing needs, bringing that information back to campus, the work that we do developing partnerships and being parts of major initiatives in the community, and then the work that we do on campus, helping to provide the infrastructure and the support for our faculty and students who are involved in community engaged activities. The overall goal of the work that we do is to maximize the impact that the resources that we have at Ball State have on the community and the ways that we can work together to address the challenges that we have. We were asked to talk a little bit about a special project that showed the linkage, and I know that there are hundreds of examples, perhaps thousands of examples now, where the students have been involved in immersive learning. But one project, many of you were in attendance, when we brought Peter Kagiyama to town, many of us here worked on that initiative. So we showed the partnership and the ability to do something together. But more importantly, hundreds of people showed up. They showed up to express a love for this city, a willingness to roll up their sleeves, a willingness to dig deep, and to start to figure out ways that we can move forward. So that project, more than any other, right now sticks out in my mind as an example of the ways that we can work together to help move forward.
Hi, I'm David Terrell. I'm the director of the Indiana Communities Institute and also the director of the State Policy Center of the Rural Policy Research Institute, or we call that RUPRI. And we take a different approach to all these activities. We are basically, we work with state and federal policymakers and really translate a lot of the research that is done in the university, such as the Bowen Center and the Center for Business and Economic Research. And we provide policy guidance on the state level and at the federal level on economic development related issues. And also working with it used to be called Indiana Association of Cities and Towns. It's now called Advancing Indiana's Municipalities. So we do a lot of work with them with that type of policy research and guidance. We also work with state agencies to develop programs and also work with the administration to develop programs to implement within communities. We do a lot in rural communities, but also communities the size of Muncie with those agencies. We have done a lot of work in East Central Indiana on behalf of the state agencies, really along the lines of what Tracy was talking about in terms of primacy of place and those types of issues, and helping, really helping the state and communities in the state to understand the paradigm shift of what economic development is. It's not just job attraction. It is the whole picture of community development. And that's essentially the work that we do.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to let you talk, I promise.
Okay.
All right, so I am going to start with a question for you, and I would encourage you first, if you have some opening remarks, then by all means, but I'll go ahead and give you my question too. Okay. So we want to try to stay as focused as we can tonight on economic development. Can certainly take us down a lot of paths, but I think we want to try to stay as focused as we can on economic development and economic growth as it pertains to, or can pertain to, Ball State, right? So I think an easy place to start is let's talk a little bit about the village. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the village, what your vision would be for the village, what the university's vision would be, and what kind of a tool can that area be for prospective students, and keeping students here on the weekend perhaps, you know, that sort of thing. So first, your opening remarks, and then perhaps your response to that. And in the meantime, I'm going to move down because I expect a really long line to form over here in this aisleway, because we are here, of course, to have dialogue between you folks and these folks. So if you would like to answer any of the questions on the card, then please come on down. And if you have questions of your own, raise your index cards up in the air so Amy knows that you are ready to turn those in, and she will bring those to me as well. So the floor is yours, sir.
First of all, thank you, Greg, and thanks to you and your colleagues at the Star Press for helping to organize these events. I'm grateful for your assistance in that regards. Also grateful to our colleagues and friends at WIPB for helping to broadcast and communicate what's happening at these forums. Grateful to my colleagues here on the table for participating, and also to our friends here at the Cornerstone Center for the Arts for giving us this wonderful historic venue to have this event. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. So to your question, the first part of it is, what is the importance of the village to the university? And the answer is, it is very important to fostering energy and vitality on our campus because it's so immediately adjacent to our campus. And I also think it's a region of the city, an area of the city, a district within the city, a relatively compact district, but one that can create greater entertainment and civic vitality in the city as well. So let me tell you about just a couple of initiatives that are already underway at the university that I think will contribute to making the village, which is good, to making it much better. First is we are building 2 academic buildings on a new area of campus called the East Quad, which is just north of the village, south of Riverside. So we are presently building the Health Professions Building. That construction is already underway. That building will be completed in the summer of 2019. That same summer, we're going to begin construction on an even larger academic building, our next foundational science building. So first of all, just as an aside, those 2 construction projects combined are $150 million. So those are contributing to economic development just with the design and construction of those projects. But more importantly, directly to the village, there will be hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of faculty and staff and students now in 2 academic buildings immediately north of the village. They will begin to then patronize those restaurants and other activities there because they're going to be immediately adjacent to it. But to try to encourage that activity, as a part of the construction of those 2 academic buildings, we're also building the first 2 phases of an East Greenway. We want to try to move pedestrian traffic, students, faculty, staff, visitors, try to move them from the sidewalks of McKinley and move them east to this new East Greenway. So we're going to have a gateway to our campus that will be constructed on right at the intersection of Ashland, just north of the village. That will, as a result of these 2 projects, will go up north and across and past Emmons, across Riverside and to Emmons. And then our plan is over the near term or the midterm to continue that greenway into the heart of our campus all the way up to Neely. That greenway will necessarily encourage faculty and staff, and most importantly students, to use that East Greenway as a pedestrian and bicycle path to bring them to the village. So those 2 projects alone are going to stimulate greater activity and vitality in the village. There are also then 2, what I would describe as opportunities for us to even accelerate further progress and enhancements in the village. One is, as you probably know, we own a very large, what is presently vacant lot on the northeast corner of McKinley and University. There were previously some proposals or things that were under consideration to go on that site. We don't presently have any plans. So one of the things that I want to do along with our facilities colleagues and others in the community, think what kind of buildings or activities could we put on that. We don't presently contemplate putting an academic building there. So what could we do as a university? What could we use on that multi-acre site that would further enhance activity in the village? And then the other thing I would say is I'm interested, I know there's a study, a Live Where You Work study that's being conducted. And I'm interested to hear what those recommendations are. I believe we'll receive those recommendations maybe before the end of the current year. And I'm interested to see what those recommendations are and how we can work perhaps in cooperation with Ball Memorial to apply those recommendations most directly to the area of the city that lies east of McKinley, south of Riverside, and goes in that neighborhood all the way down to the White River. That perhaps we should look at that neighborhood first as a concentrated effort to take those recommendations and see if we can encourage our faculty and staff and employees of the hospital to live in that neighborhood. Because if they do, that would certainly contribute to the vitality of the village.
Okay, fantastic. Do any of you have any other thoughts on the village, maybe before we move beyond that? Happy to hear it. No? Okay. Well, the first question on the card, do we have anybody? Did you guys want to answer questions? You want to hand me it? Okay, I'll get it in just a second. The first question, and it sort of transitions right off of what you were talking about, and I know this has come up already at both of our forums, is the issue of faculty members not living locally. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your thoughts on, I know that's important to you. You've already expressed that, right? And what can we do to our other panelists? What can we do on your side of things to keep Ball State faculty members in town?
Yeah. So presently, and I think as I've shared before, as you know, Greg, presently the data that we have is that approximately 75% of our full-time faculty and staff live in Delaware County. Now that's obviously a broader area than Muncie, but and there certainly is a demographic change that newer faculty are less inclined to live in Delaware County than perhaps more senior faculty. So that's why this Live Where You Work initiative is so important to us, to see what incentives or what things we can do to encourage new faculty, new staff to not only live in Delaware County, but in fact to live in Muncie itself.
Anybody else? Thoughts on retaining faculty?
The only other thing that I would add to that is we're starting a new onboarding process on the campus. So I think about integrating the kinds of activities that we do in existing processes, and the fact that we have an onboarding partner attached to each new faculty as they come on, someone who's working with them. I think that's someone who can kind of hold that faculty member's hand and integrate them into the community, make it a little bit easier for that individual. So I think we're thinking about ways that we work within existing systems to be able to beef that up a bit and make sure that folks feel welcome and connected.
Okay. Sure.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit on the Live Near Your Work initiative. We all have anecdotes that we share about why people choose to not live in Muncie. Maybe we don't have the right housing that they're looking for, or they have a partner who needs an employment opportunity that we might not have, and so partner works in Indy and they live somewhere in the middle. Lots and lots of stories, right? But we haven't really had any data to back up these stories. So part of this Live Near Your Work initiative was actually surveying people from the hospital and the university who have been hired in the last 5 years. Those who did choose to live here and those who chose not to. And we just wanted their honest feedback. And so we've been able to collect that data, and we're working now on some strategies to implement. Housing rose to the top, and that's something that we're looking at as an immediate need. But I think that's the Live Near Your Work is another great example of collaboration with the community and the university. Partnering on that was the Muncie Redevelopment Commission, my organization, the hospital, Ball State, Delaina was involved, and the collaboration and the cooperation was top-notch.
Good. Good. All right. We have someone, and I know who you are, but I'm going to ask if you come forward, then all I ask is give us your name, and if you're affiliated with an organization of any kind, let's hear that as well. If you're just a Muncie resident, that's fantastic too.
Okay. Thought I'd come up here before I chicken out. Well, I am Angie Poole, and many in the crowd know me. Sure. I am CEO of Cardinal Greenway, and question number one is just in our wheelhorse. You know, I happen to know about a couple of our assets that are huge and beneficial to all, and they happen to be Cardinal Greenway and White River Greenway. And it's exciting about the Greenway that President Mearns was talking about on campus, because you're just creeping so close to Neely with the bike lanes and getting over across to the White River Greenway, which then connects through Minnetonka's campus, which is another asset to Cardinal Greenway. And I just think together we need to realize, I know that it's talked about many, many times about what a great asset the Cardinal Greenway is, and it is a fact, a reason some people come here is because of our greenways. You know, we've actually heard that. I talked to a gentleman just yesterday that he had like 3 reasons, and the Cardinal was one of them. So I'm like, oh, you're so on my committee now. And you know, it's just that we are so pleased when we hear that, but the challenge, which is also part of this question, is we want that Greenway to be here for the next generation. You know, we're all proud of it. We're proud of Cardinal. We're proud of White River. We are kind of unique in the fact that we own the Greenway, the Cardinal Greenway, and you know, it's very unique but yet challenging, and I just always want to be able to bring it in front of everyone community-wide to let's work together to keep these trails in place, because asphalt doesn't last forever. You know, we're going to be 20 years old asphalt-wise next year. Our actual Greenway Incorporation is 25 years old, so I just always want that at the forefront of everybody's mind, because there's so many good things going on. The Greenway to the campus, to the White River, to the Cardinal, 62 miles, you know, we just can't be stopped, so.
So before I let you go, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh my goodness,
well, you're the expert.
so called.
What's your impression of Muncie residents' awareness and use of the greenways versus Ball State students' awareness and use of the Greenway?
So good, you are so good.
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes it's just like people in our own neighborhood are like, oh my gosh, we have a Greenway, really? We have a trail. And we're doing better with Ball State. A lot of it thanks to Delaina on the knowledge that we do exist and that the White River Greenway is getting so close to campus. But sometimes we don't reach those students until they're a senior, and then they find us, and it's just, oh my gosh, I wished I would have known you were here. I wished I'd have known you had free bikes. I think we are building that gap and closing that gap to knowing that we are here and working together. I've been really excited about our past year with the United Way's Day of Action. Ball State did a lot of work on the Greenway, and so we still have a ways to go, because I think there are still students that don't realize we're here, or faculty, you know, retained faculty. Hey, you have a great trail system right here that you can take advantage of after your teaching. So, but great, because we still have a lot of work to do.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Come on up if you want to answer any of the other questions. Do you guys have any thoughts on the Greenway? Do they live where you work? That has to play a role, right?
It's a great asset, which again is, and it's contiguous with the neighborhood that I just described. That neighborhood would end along the Greenway there, so it's a great resource.
All right, the white elephant in the room has been the same white elephant at every forum, Ball State parking. It's come up to the first two. Are we doing anything about parking yet, or are we looking into it? Let's go ahead and address that, because it's already on like 2 or 3 of these cards.
Well, so we have some ideas, but as you said earlier, I'm going to do more listening than talking, but I anticipate that as part of these forums, we're going to do some activities that will make the university more accessible, at least to certain activities. But I think we have to understand that parking is initially designed to support the faculty, staff, and students who pay for it.
Sure. Okay. So interesting thing that you mentioned a minute ago, and I bet you would welcome ideas, is that spot on campus that you sound like you need an idea for what to put there.
We'd love to hear some ideas about
If you
that.
have ideas for what might play well there, then this would be a good opportunity to share that. This card is, what amenities can the community provide to entice young professionals to live in Muncie? So that could go to any of our panelists. Are there specific things that we are missing?
I prefer to focus on the things that we have.
Okay, sure. So, and that's fine too. So what are the top 3 amenities,
Well,
or
absolutely.
the top couple that maybe
Affordability.
people don't realize?
Affordability,
Our downtown has come so far in the last couple of decades. It's a hot spot for people to want to live. New apartments are going up. Houses are being redeveloped in that area. And I think the nightlife is fantastic. That's great for young professionals. I think maybe something that we are missing is honestly some professional opportunities for them. Once they're out of Ball State, we certainly want to retain them, but there aren't always those opportunities that they're seeking.
Thoughts?
I would just say, Greg, that I think, you know, as you think about communities like us around the state of Indiana, and when I have my colleagues come in for overnight events, the resounding answer that I get from them and the resounding response that I get from them is, I had no idea that Muncie was this awesome. They are really impressed by the community, by the village, by downtown Muncie, and they really enjoy what we have here, and frankly, a lot of them are pleasantly stunned and surprised.
I would echo what Chris is talking about. What we're seeing around the state and what people are looking for are the types of things that you described. And I wasn't here to see the previous session on cultural amenities, but I watched it. And it's astounding the number of amenities that Muncie has in partnership with Ball State as well. And peer communities and some communities south of here would, if they were aware of what all Delaware County and Muncie had, they'd be incredibly jealous. So I think part of it is understanding what the community has and maybe doing some internal marketing about what the community has, as well as external marketing.
Okay, great. Again, come on up if you want to answer some of the questions. This one probably for our panelists, not so much for President Mearns. And I'm not going to fact check this, so if you want to set the record straight on what this card says, then by all means. But I assume this is something that other folks wonder about. What this says, well over 90% of all new businesses are small businesses. Most economic development initiatives have focused on large business and employers. What are some of your ideas to support and grow small business and entrepreneurship in the Muncie community?
Fair question, and honestly, that is the truth. Over the last number of decades, our vision program, our plan has focused on attraction of big projects, smokestack chasing. That's really not where we are today. You know, we recognize that, I think it's statistic 85–90% of new business growth is going to come from your existing businesses, small businesses, with organizations like the Innovation Connector, the CoLab, now the MadJax project. There are increased opportunities to grow these young entrepreneurs, and we're absolutely supportive of that. And with the Ball State connection as a feeder, it's a win situation for us.
Anybody else? No?
I'll just add to that the university now serves as the host for the East Central Indiana Small Business Development Center. And we're co-located there with the Innovation Connector. And they both work closely with the entrepreneurship program at Ball State. While there are other things that we can do, I think we're starting to tap into that synergy, but also thinking about ways that we might be able to get those services better in front of our students and maybe sooner, so that the students are thinking about entrepreneurial ideas, not just in the College of Business, but throughout the campus.
President Mearns, the College of Business is obviously an excellent one at Ball State, correct? And what kind of role do you think they can play in helping to stimulate small business growth in Muncie?
Well, and we've heard some of the ways in which our students and faculty and staff respond to requests for support. But also, we're trying to build a culture across all disciplines, a culture of entrepreneurship that is not confined to just business, but to encourage the attitudes of people who start or expand businesses.
Okay. All right, let's see, another question. How can Ball State, the City of Muncie, and Delaware County work together to make our community more economically resilient, sustainable, and to advance green initiatives, such as renewable energy, solar and wind, as reflected in MAP and the Vision 2021 plans? I'm just throwing these out there, hoping one of you guys will latch on to one of them.
Well, the Chamber's already started working, in Delaware Advancement Corporation has already started working with some university groups on sustainability. We partnered with, I'm trying to remember the name of the group now. Series that was looking at solar power and trying to find initiatives in that vein. I think there's going to continue to be an ongoing effort to look at ways in which you can reuse materials and build off of that as well. And again, I think anything that School of Architecture is certainly going to be bringing into play the knowledge and skill sets that those students and faculty have as they think about those kinds of pieces as well.
Okay, I'm just going to keep throwing them out. And again, if they're not right, then just set the record straight. How does one convince a business or industry to consider Muncie with one of the highest tax rates in the state over, say, Carmel or Noblesville with tax rates of less than half as much? It's getting heavy in here.
Okay.
Right? Wrong?
I'll give it a shot.
Sure. Let's see what you got.
Every project that comes to us is different in their needs and desires. And the proposals that we craft are different for each project. They want to know our tax rates, they want to know our bond ratings, they want to know the political climate, they want to know about our workforce, our electric rates, and all we can do is put together the most compelling case we can for them. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't, but it's not always about the tax rate. It is not. I mean, that's one of the first questions that we're asked. We receive these requests for information, we fill it out, they come back to us, we make it to the next round, a site visit. So I would say that that's not something that just automatically turns a business off because it's more complicated than just a tax rate.
I would echo that. That's very consistent. There's so many other variables at play. I think employers are really looking as much now at the workforce and workforce availability more than these other variables. There are so many variables at play in those kinds of decisions.
And when you talk about workforce, in terms of workforce, when we are able to show that we have Ivy Tech and Ball State right here in this community, that's a huge selling point for them. They know that that is a feeder for their employment needs.
Okay, great. This might kind of mesh with that thought. Should Muncie think of itself and present itself more as a college town? What are your thoughts on that? And might that be part of, there is potentially a workforce available because of the university, but how does that factor into the way the city can market itself?
As we're marketing Muncie and Delaware County, we absolutely refer to ourselves as a college town. Ball State is one of the hugest assets that we have, and that is certainly not left out of the conversation. It's one of the first things that we bring up.
Okay.
No, and Greg,
Sure,
what I
go
would
ahead.
add is we actually, and I think we shouldn't leave Ball Memorial out of this equation,
yes.
right?
Absolutely.
We have the two types of prominent anchor institutions that cities of our size all across the country would be very anxious to have. So we have that foundational, those two foundational assets that are very important.
Okay. This one might be a little bit more for you, President Mearns. Will BSU consider expanding enrollment at Burris and provide a greater opportunity for families living in near proximity to Burris to gain admission to Burris, and maybe that would play some role in retaining faculty as well? What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm still learning a lot on campus, and in particular about how Burris serves the community and how Burris may better serve the long-term strategic interests of the city and the university. And so one of the things as we look at these live where you work initiatives, whether Burris might be, and the admissions policies at Burris might be an asset that could be used as part of that initiative. Because I think one of the things when you asked the question earlier about how do we become more attractive to have young professionals living in Muncie, well, by definition, that population is likely to, at some point, they either do or are likely to have children.
and the situation in Muncie schools, the current fiscal situation in Muncie schools, we all know is an impediment to attracting young professionals to live there. So I know we already had a forum about education in neighborhoods, and I don't want to go down that route, but we also can't ignore the fact that these economic development initiatives and amenities and those kinds of assets are important, but we have to address the Muncie public school system. We have to address those problems.
So Tracy, can you speak specifically to how that's coming up in conversations with companies who are considering our community, and how are you working through that with folks?
Well, Greg, they read our newspaper. They're well aware of what is happening when they're looking at our community. So I don't mean that to be any kind of dig. I really don't. I'm just saying they're very aware of what's happening in the community. And so we just have to be truthful with them. Yes, we have a fiscal problem with our schools, but the chamber is engaged with the emergency management team and the superintendent to help them work through that. And I don't want to get too far down that path either. But, you know, I can only say that work is being done behind the scenes, and it is an issue.
Okay. So when you walked in, you were handed a card with questions. They want to hear your answers to those. I know, you got to be the first one to come down, but come on down and, take part and let them hear your thoughts. I love the idea that you could give ideas. Maybe your idea would be the winning idea for the corner of
we would be
McKinley
interested.
University.
We would be interested to hear your thoughts about what we could use that area on our campus to enhance the vitality of the village. We would be interested to hear some suggestions.
Maybe, and I see a couple people moving this way, I hope, and maybe you guys could talk generally about the economic impact. Let's talk about that for a moment, that the university has on just our economy in general, in terms of course, when school's in session, we have 18,000 extra people in town, but when a football game is going on, we also have extra people in town. Can somebody sort of just talk a little bit about, that makes a real difference throughout the year, right?
So I can give you, I'm sorry.
No, please.
So Mike Hicks is here, and he did a rough conservative calculation. So the economic impact in Delaware County of Ball State being here on an annual basis is $433 million a year. And I know they're also in one of the forums that came up about, well, we don't pay taxes. But because of our presence here and the salaries and other things that we spend, the university is responsible for 1 of every 5 tax dollars in Delaware County. 1 in 5. So did I get it right, Mike? Yes, sir. Thank you. I got prepped.
Good.
I think just the anecdotal component of it, again, with the area that I cover for the bank, I travel to a lot of different cities in Indiana, and again, I think President Mearns hit it dead spot on. There are a lot of communities that are really jealous of Muncie because we have an institution like Ball State, and because we have a hospital like Ball Memorial, IU Health. We have the cornerstones, the linchpins of a lot of economic development activity that frankly communities our size and others just don't have, and I think it gets overlooked because we spend so much time dwelling on some of the other pieces. We forget some of those pieces as well.
Sure. Okay, your name and your comment.
Hi, my name is Veronica, and I just moved to Muncie a little less than 2 years ago from California, and it's a nice town. I just noticed it's such a disconnect between Ball State and the Muncie school system, and I'm trying to figure out what can Ball State do to help nurture the local kids to be able to enter into their local college. And also, as far as the economic development goes, I don't understand. I've watched so many houses being torn down that have good doors, good windows, when a house that's lived in across the street have plastic on their windows, and nobody takes the time to take the windows and the doors out and the things out that could help the people who are actually living here in Muncie. there's a disconnect in why the people who are living here, trying to strive here, are not being taken care of properly, and you know, good things are just being trashed, and nobody's trying to take care of the people who really can't take care of themselves. And also, the big opioid addiction problem here. There's no sober living homes. There's no drug rehabilitation centers. There's nothing to help the people who are addicted to drugs. And that goes to the children of these drug-addicted people. Their children are out here suffering. Where's the connection that Ball State is doing to alleviate the pain that these kids are going through in their lives that they have to deal with every day? Those are some of the things that I want to know that's going to change or happen.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts.
I can speak from a statewide perspective, and I'm not sure exactly. Those last two issues are incredibly tough issues across the state. And regarding the housing issue, and Tracy and Chris may be able to speak to it a little bit more, but the laws are structured in such a way, it's really hard for cities to deal with landowners and then deal with blight issues and tearing down houses, and it's incredibly complicated. So, and this is something all cities are dealing with across the state, and it's a lot of it's just empty housing and obsolete housing that needs to be dealt with. Regarding the drug issue, it's a huge economic development issue as well, and I think everyone knows Indiana has a huge crisis, and Lieutenant Governor Holcomb and IU announced a $50 million initiative, and I think just yesterday regarding that. And we did, our center did listening sessions around the state for Lieutenant Governor Crouch, and there is an acute shortage in a lot of communities and a lot of counties and regions for mental health facilities, and really community understanding that the drug issue really is a mental health issue, more so than a crime issue. And I think all cities are grappling with this. I'm not trying to explain away things, but it's something we're trying to get our arms around and our heads around in terms of understanding what we're dealing with and how to deal with it as communities.
President Mearns, forgive me if this is too loaded, but I mean, the opioid issue is, taking over pretty much everywhere. Muncie certainly is no different in that regard. What's the university's role in trying to help fix that issue? Maybe not locally, but maybe statewide? What are your thoughts?
And I don't know specifically what activities that we are involved in, but certainly it is a challenge that's plaguing our community here in East Central Indiana, and we are trying to work in collaboration with Ball Memorial and the research that they're conducting to see if there are solutions that we can help deliver to the community. And Veronica, I'll just go back to your first question about the schools. That was the subject of the first forum, and we are very actively involved in the schools at many levels. So if you want to stick around afterwards, I'm happy to come speak with you and give you more information about that. But one of the things that I've learned from that first forum in particular is that we are very engaged in the schools, but we can and we will do more. And one of the ways that we can be better with Muncie schools is by being more strategic and focused. Presently, we have lots of activities in many levels, in many ways. And one of the things, as I say, that perhaps we can do better is to focus our energy and activities on those programs that will produce the greatest outcomes, the best benefits.
Great, and not to do a shameless plug, but if you didn't catch the first two forums, they are available on thestarpress.com, so you could see sort of what the substance of those first discussions were as a starting point for some of those other topics as well. Okay.
My name is Diane Hill, and one of the organizations that I'm most active in right now is Masterworks Chorale, and we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, so watch for our concerts in the newspaper, and we're online as well. The other organization I'm involved with right now is Minnetrista Cultural Center, and every Tuesday I volunteer in the Heritage Collection, and I'm cataloging fascinating things like Ed Ball's World War II trunk when he was a lieutenant in the Army, and he sent it home to Indiana from Kansas. And I cataloged a 1915 interstate automobile that was produced by a plant, an automobile factory in Muncie in 1915. And my point is, some of the most vibrant communities that I'm aware of have promoted their history. Louisville is the community I'm most knowledgeable about because I'm from Louisville. They have a visitor center in their historic home district, and they have walking tours, and they have promoted the history of that area. They have a museum district that's absolutely fascinating, and a glass factory that produces different kinds of art glass, from flat glass to blown glass and furnace-fired glass. And Louisville is booming around its history. Muncie has all of that. We have historic homes, we have museums, we have unique restaurants, we have unique gift shops, we have artists who are coming together in cooperative groups. Muncie needs to promote and enhance our history, our Native American history, as well as our industrial history.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Anybody? Okay, come on.
Hi.
Thanks.
My name is Jennifer Erickson, and I'm a professor in the Department of Anthropology and a very proud resident of the Riverside Normal City neighborhood, which is the neighborhood just east of campus. And so I'm here to address the first question on assets for Muncie, and I use the Cardinal Greenway probably 3-4 times a week. I go to Minnetrista all the time. I love the White River. I'm within walking distance of both downtown and my job. And my daughter luckily got into Burris, which is a huge relief for me because I was concerned, but I was also very, very happy with her experiences at Westview as well. And so I just want to say that I love the idea of building up the neighborhood of Riverside Normal City, and the neighborhood association would be very happy to serve as a cheerleader to help promote that neighborhood and get more faculty, staff, and professionals to move there, even though we also love our student neighbors and we love our students. So thank you so much for your work on that.
Okay, thanks.
And so, Greg, before you go to our next guest, and this is because this is a perfect transition. One of the things that as we think about building up that neighborhood or other neighborhoods is we're going to need support from the city to help with. Okay, that's I saw you coming. So virtually every morning, very early in the morning, while it's still dark, I walk my dog through the village, out University to the White River Greenway. And on many segments of those blocks, when it's dark, I can't walk on the sidewalk because of the roots, and I have to walk on the street. So when we come up with those initiatives, Live Where You Work, and concentrate them in that neighborhood, I'm hopeful that you'll be a good partner with us to work on the streets and the sidewalks, because it's hard to walk or ride a bicycle from our campus to the Greenway because of the condition of some of those sidewalks. Sorry to put you on the spot, Terry. Okay.
Yeah.
You're
Do you want to tell us who you are first, just in case?
Okay. Terry Whitt-Bailey. I'm the Director of Community Development for the city. And thank you for noticing that. 5 years ago, you would have had a much more feeling of despair because it would have been worse. One of the things that we noticed when we came into office in 2012 was just that, trees growing into the sidewalks, places where people couldn't roll their strollers and their children down the sidewalks. And so my office is one of the offices that does put dollars into those sidewalks. It's fairly expensive, but every year through our last consolidated plan, we have designated $125,000 for that effort, for infrastructure, for sidewalks and for streets. So hopefully we're getting to it. We're doing as much as we can with the dollars that we have available. But when you see those things, when other people, when you see sidewalks and streets that are like that, we would like to hear about that so we can make sure that it's in our paving plan.
And as you know, Terry, I think what the city has done on Neely between the campus is great. And one of the things that we're doing in partnership with the city is the university is going to assume ongoing responsibility to maintain the medians. So if you can help make the investments in the infrastructure, we'll partner with you to assist with the maintenance of those.
Absolutely, it's a deal. Thank you.
Okay.
Speaking of partnerships, I had an opportunity to meet with your interim director of your Rinker International program at Ball State, and we visited the Muncie Public Library earlier this week and looked at the artifacts that were saved through our sister city interactions and collaborations and partnerships. What kind of process can we continue to go through? And I know Tracy has a lot of background with that, but how can we as a community, as a university, the school systems, how can we continue to work on those sister city relationships from the areas that are outside of the United States?
Well, maybe I'll jump in there. Sure. Since I put Terry on the spot. Yeah. So we have relationships as an institution with universities all around the world. I signed just 2 more memorandums of understanding just yesterday with an institution in China and an institution in South Korea. So perhaps what we can do is share with you and your colleagues where we already have those existing partnerships and relationships, and see if we can work with the institution in that city to expand the relationship to include the city there as well.
Terry, I would add, I don't know if you were around at the time, but our office helped coordinate a 6-week program for delegates from Jiang, China, probably 6-7 years ago, maybe a little longer. That's the kind of thing that we can help coordinate again if we know that those priorities are there and we have the partnership with the city. So that was a joint effort, and each of those delegates had an internship, and we relied heavily on the city to help us find those placements. But we have the access to the expertise on campus if you have the access to the opportunities in the community.
Well, we would definitely work with the chamber. We wouldn't do it without their assistance and partnership. Yeah, thank you.
The difficulty often comes with changes in administrations at the highest level, and sometimes the relationships are established with one individual, and then when there's a change, there's this unfamiliarity. But I think part of a sister city relationship is educational exchange, and that's something that I think we can consistently work on with the university. Sometimes the business and the cultural exchange kind of falters a little bit, but the educational one is a solid one.
Yeah. Thank you. Come on up. So we got a few more minutes here. If you have some thoughts, then come on down. The time is kind of winding down for us, but we want to make sure that I've got one more out here and maybe a couple more making their way. But so if you don't mind lining up, that way we don't miss you. Come on up here. Yeah, if you don't mind. All right.
Hi, my name is Alice Bennett. I'm an emeritus professor at Ball State. Have lived in Muncie for many years, many years. But one of my concerns is I'm listening to the kinds of things that the university does, the kind of development, the sorts of things that we can do. One of the things that has really troubled me even more recently has been the fact that we somehow feel that there's Northwest Muncie and that's it. There is actually, in terms of geographics, more of Muncie is southeast of Muncie. We look at everything that is north of the river, and yet we have 75% of our kids are on free lunch. Those kids are coming from South Muncie. The Ross Center, I was just there today at a memorial service, and they're doing wonderful things. We do have interns who come and help us with our kids, but as I hear about development, and I think about the fact that the only big grocery stores are north of McGalliard. If you live south of the river, in order to get even to go to a grocery store, you take a bus to downtown, you go back down, and so on. Also, if you live at the far east end of Muncie, of Jackson, your nearest our grocery store now is Meijer, over on the west end of Muncie. And so I think what I'm asking is, how can we, as a university, begin to look at something that is not just right around us, but look at Muncie as a total city and recognize the fact that we do have a lot of really very, very good people, resources. How can we help people at that end of Muncie to be able to take advantage of what the university can do?
Okay, thank you. And President Mearns, our first forum was not just about education, but also about neighborhoods. Right. And that came up during that forum as well.
It did. And so, in all seriousness, what are your suggestions? I'm interested, we're involved, our faculty and staff and students are involved all across Muncie in various ways, but do you have some specific suggestions or concepts, initiatives that we could have?
I'm not an economist, I'm a biologist, okay? But I do have concerns for them. Number one, how can we at least provide or encourage people to come in and perhaps have some businesses that are even close to where they are? How can we do things that will utilize some of the people who are living there? In fact, if you look at those areas, their poverty level, and they need to have some place where they can buy things. In terms of buying food, they have these, what are these little stores that none of us would go to buy food because they happen to be close, but they're so expensive. How can we use some of our resources when we encourage businesses, or for that matter, well, forget about that matter, but how can we perhaps get some things that would be establishing themselves in a way that the people who live there, who mostly renters, this used to be a thriving neighborhood down around 12th and 10th when we had, and I don't know how many of you have driven out West 8th, and you see those big empty lots out where we used to have factories. These were people who had wonderful jobs. The houses were small but very good. They're not there anymore. And as we're encouraging development, if you look at the streets, for that matter, that are in that area, they're not like McKinley. Anyhow, it seems that the university has a group of people who could, if they really, well, they care, but they don't realize what there is. How can they do some things that would encourage development in that particular area?
Okay.
Thank you.
That's my...
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think 1 and 2, did you come down as well? Okay. Come on. Yeah. And 3. So, and 4. Okay, we got 4 more, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay. Who are you first?
I'm Barry Banks, and I am the founder and executive director of the Red Tail Land Conservancy. And I've spent the last 18 years of my professional life as a director of a not-for-profit here in Muncie, Indiana. And this may sound flippant, but I think I'm going to make a point. And that is, for 17 of those 18 years, I've had a salary as not-for-profit, and I haven't missed a paycheck yet. And the reason that that's significant, and I think something that's really been overlooked here in this economic, but it's really to the heart of economic development here, is that while people spend a lot of time talking about and lamenting the loss of good union jobs, and my father was a union worker at Guide Lamp, and so I understand that, good pay. But what I haven't heard anybody say much, or I have, about the corporate community that we have here, and major corporate community, and some of them left, but what they contributed to and set a legacy here for us in the community. Here's some of the organizations that are here because of those organizations. Ball Brothers Foundation, the Georgia Francis Ball Foundation, Ed Virginia Ball Foundation, the Ziegler Foundation, the Community Foundation of Muncie, Delaware County. And when people start saying about the good things about our community, and one of the good things is that we're very generous to donations. There's figures on that. But one of the reasons that happens in Muncie is because of the example set by those not-for-profits. Most of them have ball in their name, but not all of them. And I would say, I would mention a couple more names. And one of them is First Merchants Bank. First Merchants Bank. Whitinger and Associates. Defer Varan. All are corporate entities that have served this community, mostly behind the scenes, but they have made organizations like mine thrive here. And I saw that. No, okay, well, I thought you were, you know, I thought I was going to get the hook here.
No, not yet.
No, okay, good. Jobs. We talk about jobs, political, all the political surveys tell politicians they got to talk jobs. But in a not-for-profit world and in the environmental world that I live in, we talk more about quality of life. That's what we do. We talk about quality of place. That's what we do. And the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, when you have quality of life, which we have in Muncie, and when you have quality of place, which we have in Muncie, you get jobs. Huh, Tracy? Amen. That's what, thank you, yeah. Okay, Chris, you buy it into that at all? Okay, good. And so President Mearns, I won't call you by your name. Ball State, to wrap up, Ball State has a wonderful system of field stations. I'm sure you're aware of it. I have had the good fortune to have received numerous hours, hundreds of hours of volunteer work from the top on down through the Ball State administration, professors, students, et cetera, et cetera. And we've currently worked on the field stations, of working around and with, we, the Red Tail, and with, from Kim Badger and Christy Woods to Heath Farm, and there's one that out in Albany, another beautiful field station out there, Cooper Farm, all those places. Red Tail is looking at an initiative, a project, to combine a number of those with a trail. And we're just kind of waiting for you to kind of get up to speed here, sir, so that we can just throw that on your desk.
All right. I'm waiting. I'll just say two.
In other words, I think you're going to hear from Barry again.
Well, and I had the pleasure of meeting Barry at the ride a couple weeks ago, so thank you. I'll just say two things. One is I think we're all in agreement of the recognition that economic development begins with quality of place and quality of life. The second thing I'd say is you're exactly right. When we think about the wonderful assets that we have here, is a philanthropic community that contains many very generous and substantial foundations. And in fact, at the program in which my appointment was formally recognized, I spent most of my time talking about the reason that Ball State needs to be more actively engaged with the community is because the reason we are as strong as we are right now is because of the generosity over decades of the people of Muncie. That creates an obligation, I believe, a moral obligation for us to do more to support the community.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, but I think that generosity from the people is a result, to some degree, of the generosity displayed by the Ball family, and they set the tone,
Right.
and people want to be a part of success.
That's right.
And so, when you come to Ball State, you're part of that Ball family now, sir, as you
right.
know.
I agree.
And they have set a wonderful example.
I agree. Thank you, Barry.
Can I add to that, Barry? I read a study just recently from the Sagamore Institute that rated Muncie as #1 in charitable giving and #2 in civic involvement of major cities across the state of Indiana. So
Right.
I think that's something for us to be proud of and consistent.
My name's Steve Reed. My background is in the 80s, I redid a bunch of buildings downtown Muncie, 52 apartments, 24 offices, and 12 commercial spaces within 3 blocks of the courthouse downtown, and I currently live behind the Civic Theater. In recent years, and more recent months now, I've gotten into redeveloping industrial properties. I owned a place called Frank's Foundries for a few years, and I didn't find the tools I needed to redevelop that property. It's gone on to other areas now, or other ownership. But in the last 2 years, I've been doing environmental cleanup on a property at 18th and Hackley, and I've found tools in which I can now do industrial cleanups of other locations in Muncie. In the last 3 blocks, I've either purchased or contracted to do 17 more city blocks in Muncie, do environmental cleanups for industrial properties. And with these opportunities, I've discovered I'm looking to do many other projects in Muncie. So I'm here now to say my name's Steve Reed. I'd like to work with the university to see how we can make my neighborhood a better place to live.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Come on up. So one more and then one more, okay? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Isbell, and tonight we've talked a lot about quality of place and quality of life. And first of all, I just want to thank all the panelists and all the community members who are here, as you guys inspire me and help me to be motivated to try to grow quality of place and quality of life going forward as a young 22-year-old, not even knowing what those terms meant before I came to Ball State. Also, regarding the last few questions and the grocery stores and the food, I would encourage you to engage in those conversations at the Food Summit next week, or in 2 weeks, I'm sorry, at the Alumni Center. But my question tonight is in regards to, so as a huge believer and advocate for the entrepreneurial learning and immersive learning opportunities, I am a strong believer that if you give me a student with a major, I'm a senior dietetic student myself. If you give me a student with a major, I can match that student with a need in the community where they can thrive and really apply themselves. And coming from a generation who I think would align with the thought that we care about making sure that we feel that we are truly making a difference. And I see the opportunity with the entrepreneurial learning that if we can bridge the gap between helping students understand how they can make a difference in their community and the community's needs specifically versus just plugging them into a job that they're going to need to get just to make a living for housing, what are we doing or what can we do to truly bridge that gap and the best showcase? I understand that we have the Office of Community Engagement, and I've spoken with them about a couple projects that I have in mind as well. But the entrepreneurial learning, how do we really take hold of that and sink our teeth into that opportunity to bridge the gap?
So Delaina, do you want to talk? Do you want to do that one, or do you want me to?
Why don't you start and then
why
I'll add.
why don't you start and I'll clean up?
Stumped by a student.
Maybe I
No,
can
I
say
didn't get it. I
something.
got an idea, but go ahead.
Maybe I can say something to give you guys a couple seconds, but
Trust me, we're ready. We're ready,
He's
Jonathan.
ready.
Go
He's
ahead.
ready.
Go ahead, Delaina.
He's all right. Let's go.
I have a thought, but go ahead, Delaina.
Well, I think we are doing a lot with immersive learning, and Kelly Huth is here, and she and Matt Bailey and that team has been phenomenal. But I appreciate the idea that we might be able to do more about bringing the needs, the information into the students. I think we focus on assessing the needs in the community and we bring that back to the faculty, but the students, and I've been receiving a lot of calls recently from students who say, I want to make a difference. I need to make a difference, help me. So I think we need to formalize that a little bit. And I do believe the work that Peggy Sanova is doing and Ted Baker and the folks in the Entrepreneurship Center, I think we can build on that. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on what we can do, but I appreciate the energy and the enthusiasm and the reminder that we need to think about bringing that information back to the students and identifying those opportunities, because I think you're right, entrepreneurship exists across a number of disciplines, not just in the College of Business, but in areas like you described. So thank you for the reminder, and we'll get to work on that.
So a couple of quick responses. Going back to Delaina's point about our students desiring to be involved in projects. So over the summer, before classes start, I met with all of the RAs on campus, about 150 undergraduate students, and simply just asked them what they thought I needed to know to serve as the president of Ball State. And first of all, they told me that the best donut is at Concannon's, and they're right. But then secondly, very early on, one of the students said, this was a 21-year-old young woman who said, we want to be more involved in the community. These were our students who were telling us the kinds of things we're talking about tonight, the kind of things that you just said, Jonathan. They want to become more involved. I think going to Delaina's point and the point that I attempted to make a short time ago is, presently I think we're more responsive or reactive. And I think what we can do better is by being strategic. You use the word formalize, whatever, is bringing more, not only expanding the opportunities, but think about what opportunities we're going to take advantage of to have the greatest potential impact. As I say, to be more strategic in our deployment of those resources.
Okay, great. And where are you from?
Originally?
Sure.
Near Columbus, Indiana.
Okay, so how about a round of applause for this young man, a Ball State student. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. All right. I know who you are.
I know who you are, neighbor. Good evening. Andy Bound. I'm with Ivy Tech Community College. And first of all, I just wanted to say to Ball State, my family and I moved here 5 years ago to accept what I think is a very great opportunity with Ivy Tech Community College. But I don't know the extent that we would have been able to say yes if it hadn't been for the amenities and the strengths that Muncie has as a community. And Ball State is a critically important part of that. And so we applaud Ball State. And the partnership, obviously, that Ivy Tech has. Specifically, one of the questions was, how do we retain more students from Muncie schools to attend Ball State? And I think there are a lot of partnerships that are already underway. When we look at the early college program, this year we'll have approximately 80 students from Muncie Central graduate from high school with at least a one-year credential or an associate degree, with the majority of those students transferring to Ball State. The trick is, how do we create the most affordable options and the most attractive options for students, I believe, in the Muncie schools to want to stay home and get a great education. And so I think partnerships that we can do and continue to foster with that. I also think of the pipeline of teachers. We have a partnership together in our teacher education programs that prepare teachers to work anywhere. But certainly I think of one student who graduated 3 years ago from Ivy Tech with an associate degree in the ASAP program, a one-year accelerated program. She transferred to Ball State and earned her degree this past year and is now teaching in the Muncie schools and is able to do that very cost effectively and come out with the skills she needs to contribute not only to the betterment of our community and the students who attend the Muncie schools, but create that pipeline of teachers to create the most viable options for a highly rewarding career that doesn't always pay among the most highly rewarding careers, and perhaps should. So, thank you, Ball State.
Great. So, and if I can build off of one thing that you said, is I think one of the ways we're improving in higher education as an enterprise, but also Ivy Tech and Ball State, is recognizing that we're not simply disconnected stops along a talent development pipeline, right, or pathway. That what we're doing is recognizing that, and by that I mean somebody would graduate from high school, so they completed high school, and then they would start college. As you suggested a moment ago, we're giving them college education and college credits while they're still in high school. And as you know well, we want to continue to build the partnership between Ivy Tech and Ball State so that students can transfer seamlessly, if they choose to, after they complete a degree at Ivy Tech, or perhaps even before, so that they can make that seamless transition without wasting any time, credit, or money. And we're grateful to work with you on creating that seamless partnership.
I think there's another opportunity that we have together with the Muncie schools. And if you look at the Commission for Higher Education report, 2017 report that looks back at the 2015 graduates, there are 42% of those students who did not pursue higher education options within 1 year after graduating from high school. So I think one of our challenges as a community is how do we increase the college-going rate across the state, but specifically for us here in this community for Muncie. So thank you.
And I think one of the things that we can do to support you is if we're going to substantially increase the educational attainment levels in our community, we can't simply rely on high school graduates to go to college. We have to do more to have returning adults complete.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think we do have one more, and that'll be our final comment. And then so that you all can start thinking, I'm going to give you each an opportunity for a closing statement, not an argument, closing statement, okay? And we'll start down here and work our way down when we get to that point so you guys can be ready, okay? All right.
Hi, Greg. Good evening.
Hello, George.
I know a number of people here, and I think it's not inappropriate that that young man be followed by two people later by the oldest man. In any event, I've been in Muncie now, this is 52 years, and I've really committed myself to the town. It always reminded me of home, which was Bloomington. And I always felt like Muncie had the attributes that some of you have already mentioned of having several educational institutions like Ball State and Ivy Tech, has a river, has a great volunteer group of people, and why aren't we doing better than we might be doing? So I want to put the moderator on the spot. In other meetings I've been to, you know, when you get old, you don't care what people say, but in any event, I'd like to challenge you to explain why, in my opinion at least, the headlines in the newspapers are more negative than positive almost all the time. And do you locally have any control over that at all? And then our political system is always, well, I've been a part of the Muncie Action Plan since it started. And it started out of what I call political chaos. And it was an effort to bring the community together. And I applaud the university for initiating these meetings and you for sponsoring it. Because to me, this is another coming together like the Muncie Action Plan was, and it bodes well for our future. And I want to thank the university and you also. Sure. But I also would like to hear you respond to the comments. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts. I guess I am on the spot now, and that's fine. I'm happy to be able to say after the third of our forums, and I perhaps was going to touch on this in my closing argument anyway, you know, this, as the Star Press, we didn't just host this for fun. It took some work, and Ball State did most of the heavy lifting, and we were appreciative for that. But this was a listening opportunity for us as well. And you should know that we not only had me here, obviously, for each of these, but we had our news columnist, Jeff Ward, at all of these, and we had a reporter at all of these, and at least one photographer at all of these. So at all of them, at least 4 of our staff members were here. So we're listening, and I want you to know that we've definitely heard some things in these forums, whether it is the criticism of too many negative headlines or just story ideas. I can assure you that we're listening, and we will do our part where we see fit. So with that, I will kick it to you guys and give you a moment to give some closing thoughts.
I think I'm starting.
You are.
We've heard tonight that there actually is a lot of good happening in Muncie in terms of economic development. We've heard that there is a paradigm shift and an understanding that really it is about talent attraction, retention, and development, and we're talking about all of those things. It is about population growth. And I am impressed with the Muncie Action Plan and Vision 2021. Something we really haven't really talked about, we touched on the whole regional dynamic. And Muncie is the core of a region. And one of the things we do in the work that we do around the state and the country is we talk to communities to think about reaching out or thinking about the value added a community brings to other communities in the region. What are the value added assets that you bring to Madison County? What are the value added assets you even bring to Hamilton County? And I think that can start a different kind of discussion within the community when you think about how you're seen from outside the county and the assets you bring to the whole region. That might be a different way to approach some of your planning and your activities.
Well, I won't have anything as profound as that, but I do have a feeling about what's going on in this community. I came in 1990, and I see a spirit of cooperation and collaboration now that is unprecedented. As I mentioned, I'm getting calls from students. We met with a group of faculty members just 2 days ago about neighborhood revitalization, and with very little work, we had 20 people who came up ready to roll up their sleeves and say, what can I do? I have talents, I have abilities, I want to give back, and we have that spirit in the community to work together. So I think that that's something for us to continue to build on, to be proud of, and to help move us forward. So that spirit of collaboration and cooperation, we have it. We can make this happen together.
My wife and I came to Muncie in 2005. We made this our home, and this community made us feel welcome. It is a welcoming community. It's a welcoming place, and it is a place that we're very proud of. And as I said earlier, I'm proud to show this off to my colleagues. I'm proud of my client base. I'm proud to serve as chair of your chamber, and I look forward to the coming year in that role. One of the things that the previous two speakers just mentioned, and I think it's really important to bring up again, when the United Way sat down with President Mearns and talked about his inauguration week, 2 or 3 days of inauguration activities, he very quickly stepped up and said, we have a moral imperative to give back as a university, and we think that this is a great way to do that. And we more than doubled the number of people involved in the Day of Action. And I have a feeling that next year it's going to be even bigger, because President Mearns and Ball State University stepped up to a phenomenal degree with volunteers, faculty, staff, students, and President Mearns was out there with, I believe you read stories to some little ones, and even had one who I think if I remember right, needed to give you a hug as part of that. So very appreciative of the university and their volunteer spirit.
I don't have a lot to add. I know that I'm between you folks and here getting some dinner tonight, but I just want to thank the Star Press and the university for making this happen this evening. This Vision 2021 plan is pretty daunting, the goals and objectives and the measurements that we've outlined here. And I don't believe it could be implemented without the assistance of the university and the community as a whole. If you are interested in getting a copy of this plan, please see me. I'd be happy to get one to you. But I'm kind of reminded of a quote that I really like as a result of some of your comments tonight, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's Lily Tomlin, and she always said, I always thought someone should do something about that, and then I realized I was somebody. So I'll just leave you with that.
So a couple points. First, Greg, I want to end where I began. Thank you. The idea for this was hatched at a restaurant not far from here the first time we had a chance to meet, and we came up with this concept, and I'm grateful for the way in which it turned out. These have been very beneficial to me as I've gotten oriented here in Muncie and at Ball State. Quickly on that United Way, as Chris was talking about, I think last year Ball State had about 60 to 70 faculty, staff, and students who participated in the United Way. This year we had 360. And they mobilized that group with just a simple request to say, how about we do more with the United Way? And people responded, and Delaina, you and your team responded so well to help organize that. The final point that I want to make is, there are a number of great resources that we can marshal together to help Muncie and Delaware County thrive. And we've talked about those. But the reason I am so optimistic about our future, and genuinely and profoundly optimistic about our future, is because I've learned a little bit about our past. And next year we're going to celebrate the centennial of the founding of Ball State, founded in 1918. But what I realized was, in reading the history, was that wasn't the first attempt for the people of Muncie to bring higher education to this community. There were 4 prior unsuccessful efforts. They failed 4 times, but they didn't give up. They remained committed to a vision that we now have of this comprehensive public research university. So we are undoubtedly going to face challenges in the future, big challenges, as we work on some of the items that we talked about today. But it's because of that, not just the generosity, but the persistence of the people of this community, that I'm so profoundly optimistic. So thank you very much.
Great. And with that, I'm going to close tonight, and I won't keep you much longer, I promise. I do want to express some gratitude to a few folks. First, obviously, to President Mearns. Thank you so much for doing this. You took a leap of faith when I suggested that we do this series of 3 town halls, and hopefully I didn't scare you too badly, and we kept things pretty middle of the road. But I also know that you heard some great ideas as we went through these 3 forums, and so I'm energized for that. My thanks also to the Ball State marketing and communication staff who put most of this together for us, to be honest with you. The Star Press was happy to facilitate. The Star Press was happy to publicize and try to draw a crowd here, but that office did the majority of the work, and I'm not afraid to admit that, and I appreciate everything that they did. I also do want to take just a moment to thank Jeff Robinson, who helped coordinate this at Cornerstone. He donated the facility to this tonight, so we appreciate him for doing that, just like we appreciated the folks at Minnetrista and Muncie Community Schools who let us use Southside Middle School the first time. I want to thank all the Star Press readers who have stayed up with the coverage of these forums, and I hope that that has helped to generate some further ideas with our readers as well. And if you're watching this online, I hope that you feel empowered to share your ideas, not only with the folks at Ball State, but the folks who have been on our 3 panels as well. And with that, I will close for the night. I wish you a good night and a safe travel home. Thank you so much.